And here we go. We've got the thing saying that we're live. I can never get this thing runs some unknown distance behind real time. Anyway, we are starting. We are here. Welcome to everybody. We have one item of unfinished business, and that's the August giveaway, which I haven't done. I've got two giveaways. One is a multifunctional microscope, and the other is a digital microscope. And September's gift is going to be another microscope, a bigger one. And so we'll see how that does. Now, very few people entered, 4 to be precise. This was the July giveaway. This is the it's Alan Stiver, and he's August giveaway. And this is Mark Tullis, August giveaway. And this is David Mark Samsell. It says August giveaway. Okay, so we've got these right here. Gonna have to put a little bit more emphasis on it. Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another Thursday evening live stream. And I greatly appreciate all of you being part of that live stream. We don't have much in the way of people on right now. We'll just go on ahead and talk to people. I just came back from the Albuquerque Hamfest. Apparently, one of the local nicknames for Albuquerque is Duke City. Apparently, somewhere in the history of Albuquerque, they had some sort of as the Spanish land grants and all that stuff went back, there was somebody who came in and set himself up as a duke. And I don't know where duke fits in the hierarchy of kingdom to pauper, but it's somewhere in there. And anyway, the city to this day apparently is called Duke City by those in the know. I had to ask a few years ago when I was down there. I've been several times. They skipped 4 years because of COVID. And then this last year, they couldn't find enough volunteers. And they lost their slot at the hotel. So they've gone back to their roots. They started at this continuing education building that's right downtown. Had the banquet and stuff up at a hotel. And so when I gave my presentation, it was standing room only. Of course, the room could only hold about 25 people. It was a classroom that they used for their New Mexico continuing education stuff that they had there. They had quite a bit of stuff going on. So there were like 4 tracks of talks. I gave my talk on nuclear, the effects of high-altitude nuclear electromagnetic pulse. And then the talk that I gave on some patent history of the Vibraplex was lightly attended with about 7 or 8. But that's nice because you can be very interactive with the people when you're doing that. And so the next big event coming up is Pacificon, which will be held in San Ramon, California, in the Marriott there. It's a very pretty little town. It's like 3 rows inland. You've got San Jose down at the bottom of the bay, San Francisco, of course, up on the bay. You skip over the bay, and you've got a line of San Leandro, places like that, including Oakland up there. And then you go over another body of water, and you pick up a whole string of communities, and San Ramon is one of those. And It's very beautifully kept area. One of the problems with very beautifully kept areas is they don't like RV parks in their midst. So this is a problem, of course, in all big cities. There are no RV parks actually in the cities. I guess what people object to is not people coming and going, but people coming and staying. Um, and a lot of people do that. We stopped at an RV park in the Farmington area, actually Bloomfield, New Mexico, on our way home. Very nice little park. Fully 1/3 of their spots were inhabited by what you would call, I guess, permanent residents. They call them monthly, but it's kind of a permanent residence. It's a relatively inexpensive way to go, and it allows people to have a place to call home, and if something does go badly wrong, they can always pick up and move because their home moves. And so they're using RVs, and some of the, if you get the little inexpensive RVs, we had one, our first trailer. It said right in the owner's manual, this thing is designed to be used 4 or 5 times a year for 3 or 4 days each. And boy, the rate things fell off of that, I could sure tell. We are in a Class C motor home that appears to be built very solidly. I'm trying to go through the little issues with it one by one and get it fixed. I went down the way the sink is connected is interesting. The sink does not have a separate drain pipe going up and out. There should be a U-bend and then into the sink, and they don't do that. I may just completely fix that plumbing in there, but the sloshing around on the highway is going to empty that U-bend. What they have instead is a thing about this long. It's a white tube, and inside of it is a sort of a bladder that runs along the length of the tube. Now, it's got enough push in the bladder to keep the thing closed, but if there's water, the water will just go right through. Well, the way they've got that thing lined up, you can't get this tight and this tight at the same time. So I went down to Ace Hardware here in Montrose and said, I need a magic tape that I can put around a leaking drain pipe in an RV. What do you got? And a couple of the salesmen laughed, but one of them said, I got just the thing for you. And he led me to some tape that they had. It was a tape that sticks only to itself, and was designed to be stretched and is designed specifically to collar leaks like this. Now, I waited till the thing was very thoroughly dried out before I applied the tape. And it seems to be working. A drop or two I can handle. Puddle on the floor I can't. So, anyway, the things have gone on. I may have influenced Camping World a little bit. Every time we go in there, I ask if they have a bidet attachment for the RV toilet. And they all just laugh or ask what that is or stuff like that. Well, Camping World, in one of their recent advertisements, has come out with a bidet adapter that fits about half of their toilets. I don't think it fits mine. I may actually change the toilet just to have the bidet. And when you get to be of a certain age, little things like that are just really, really nice little accessories. So we went down there on Thursday. It was a very long run. We're going to do it in the future now in 2 days. And we got down to an RV park that was well to the west of Albuquerque. And it turns out it was only a 15-minute drive into where the Hamfest was being held. We had a little problem with the Jeep. I had everything set up to go for the next morning when we were here at home. Everything all set up. And there's a thingamajig. I think that's the technical term, that senses deceleration and causes a brake push on the Jeep, directly in the Jeep. Even though it's power brakes, but you can still push through that. And I apparently had it set so that it was pushing that brake pedal enough that it turned on the brake light in the back, and it stayed on all night. Because in the morning we had a dead Jeep, and a little hard to get in and out of a dead Jeep. But we got it down to Albuquerque, and some wonderful first responders stopped by in an ambulance. They were at the RV park for some reason, and got us jump started and got us on the way, and we were very grateful for that. And the Jeep has continued to run since. I did go up to the Jeep dealer and say, this is what happened. Do I need to get a new battery or not? Because a complete discharge for an automobile battery is very bad for it. It's not designed for it. Now, if it were a deep cycle battery, yes, but deep cycle batteries don't make good starting batteries. What you need on starting is not so much voltage, but current, and lots of it, to turn that motor. And that's why your lights dim when you turn the motor on and stuff like that. Anyway, it worked. We're back. We're safe. Things went well. I really enjoyed myself down there. The interesting thing was that there were a lot of Augies in there. A lot of Augies. And I got to meet many of them. And I just enjoy that. I don't know how many selfies were taken, a bunch, things like that. I guess that's replaced autographs now. I don't autograph anyway, but I'm too concerned about using my signature. Anyway, I had a good time down at the Hamfest. And if you get a chance to go to some mid-size Hamfest like this or Pacificon or something, you know, the big ones in the U.S. are the Dayton, and then there are the Huntsville and Sun and Fun. And I'm not exactly sure where that is. It's in Florida, what's left of it right now. I understand the storm that's going to cut across Florida, cut across the Panhandle, is a Category 4 storm. They max out at Category 5. Unfortunately, most of the flood infrastructure that the U.S. has built is enough to handle a Category 3 hurricane, and anything beyond that, like when Katrina came to New Orleans, will overwhelm the flood walls and stuff like that. I don't know. Frankly, you look at those houses that are on stilts, kind of partly over the water, and I'm thinking I could never fall asleep in one of those. I just keep listening to the waves, and where does the big wave come and take the thing down? It would scare me. I have the same apprehension about living below dams. When I was a child, there was a dam in Baldwin Hills in California. There'd been a lot of oil drilling, and California is oil country, by the way. There'd been a lot of oil drilling, and the soil subsided, and it broke the dam. And all the water came out and just ripped out everything below it. It was part of the city's water system's reservoir system. And I saw that on television, our wonderful black and white television. And I will tell you that ever since then, I've been afraid of those stupid things. I don't like to be below a dam because I'm picturing in my mind that just the other side of that dirt are several million gallons of water that want to be where I am. So there we go. All right, let's go through a couple things. First, this is a new toy. I'll say new toy. I bought it with channel funds, and it's what we're going to use from now on. You may have seen a lot of YouTube influencers wearing these things. They've got a microphone right in there, and they transmit wirelessly to the master, and it actually records in here. It can record like 7 hours of stuff. And there's a microphone up here on the top and a button, and you can also plug in a lavalier mic if you would prefer. But I've always seen YouTubers, clamp these to their collars and stuff like that. So I figured, got one of those now. And now this one that I got has 2 transmitters, 2 right here. And then this right here is the master. And actually, we don't need a separate recorder anymore because these record. You can record it one of 2 ways. You can record each microphone separately or the 2 of them together. Now, the problem with doing the 2 of them together is levels. You're going to get one guy who's soft-spoken and another guy who yells. I saw this in a video. It was Juan Brown video, Blanco Lirio. He does fantastic videos. He'll take an aircraft accident apart long before the NTSB can figure it out. He also rose to fame in the work he did talking about the big dam that's up there that just about failed. And he was right there. Sometimes he was the only journalist at a press conference, but boy, could he ask the right questions. And so for somebody like me as an engineer who wants to know the detail, he has it. Anyway, he was interviewing somebody. And normally on YouTube, you use your outdoor voice. The reason for that is not only it makes it easier for microphones to pick up, but also it sounds like you're talking to a group of people. And he was interviewing a guy who was using his indoor voice because he wasn't trained in this sort of thing. And so he was just, kind of talking like this. And the sound difference was enormous. But this allows me now to include people in the interviews, a couple people, and get the sound levels right. So that's nice. I think I spent about $450 on this. Professional sound equipment is not cheap. And if you get cheap sound equipment, it sounds cheap. I had, when I first started, a little wired mic that I got from Radio Shack. No, it was a wireless. But somewhere in there, the level was turned up too much. And it was clipping all the time. And it was unusable because of that. My son, who does video, he says, "Dad, you've got to record cold." I go, "I don't want to freeze." He says, No. You don't want the peaks to go up to 0 dB. You want them to be about 12 dB below. And then you can do the rest in the computer. And that's what we do. We do a little compression and then lift the volume levels up so they fill the channel. And it seems to work pretty well. New toy arrived in the mail a few days ago. That's this right here. This is a new Anytone radio. It's fairly small. I think it's smaller than the other one. It does not have the Bluetooth and the stuff like that. But this has got all your usual things. It comes with 2 antennas. One is this big one. Another is a little stubby thing for close-in work. And it's DMR and FM. And when I first turned it on, the backlight stayed on for only 5 seconds. And I said, I'm going to fix this. So I turned it so that it boots, and then it comes up with its Anytone line, and then comes up with the two channels. You can flip back and forth between them. And the light went off after 5 seconds. I'm going, I can't even get from one display to the next in 5 seconds. So online, in fact, in the video, which went out today, you see how I'm going through the menu, and I find the thing that leaves the light on for a while, and I changed it to 25 seconds. Okay, so this is something that I will be reviewing. The box opening is today, and the testing on the spectrum scope, the tiny spectrum analyzer, was excellent. The harmonics were way down, much better than very nearly every Chinese radio I've ever touched. Now, this radio came to me courtesy of Bridgecom Systems. Bridgecom Systems is a company that primarily makes repeaters and stuff, not only for ham, but for military and civil agencies and so on. And they picked up the Anytone line. What's different about them, you can buy the Anytones anywhere. What is different about them is that they provide support for the radio. Primarily that's in the form of training. They've got what they call DMR University or something like that, and they provide you a lot of support. Somebody came to me and said, I bought a radio and I called Bridgecom and they wouldn't support it. I said, where'd you buy it? He says, at HRO. I says, well, then you need to go to HRO for the support. He says, but they don't provide any. Well, I said, you can go to Bridgecom Systems and purchase the DMR University if you wish for like $100 or something like that. So they put a lot of effort into making these things actually work. And that is why, in a very unusual step, if you're going to buy an Anytone radio, buy it from Bridgecom Systems. They make nice, fairly, Anytone makes nice, fairly high-end equipment, but it's still grossly less than an equivalent Kenwood or something. I was at Dayton and was talking with the Kenwood folks, and they were showing me this beautiful VHF radio. Oh, it had color galore and had features. It was just wonderful. Wouldn't quite slice bread, but came very close. So I went over to the HRO people and says, how much is this thing? And they said, about $600. I'm going, I have plenty of radios already, thank you. You can buy an HF radio for that. So I don't know how they're competing. I'm going to have to do a sort of a shootout between DMR, D-Star, and System Fusion and kind of see which sounds best. Because DMR, in my opinion, is a little... the thing I like to use the term is rocky. It's gravelly. It doesn't really sound like somebody's voice. Now, mind you, the thing about these radios is that you can put two DMR radios on a single channel. There is a time slot 1 and a time slot 2. And when you turn this thing on, and it's booting, please wait. I may have been responsible for that because I said you got too much dead air time there while this thing boots. But okay, let's go analog. Let's go digital. I don't know if this will make any difference. Yeah. It's not transmitting. Okay, there. You hear that buzz? That's the system going back and forth between channels. And they sync up with each other when you talk to them. And yes, you can do things where you can get simultaneous two-directional stuff, but I'm not that much into DMR. I'm going to have to revise that and get my hotspot reconnected and stuff like that. Okay, let's go up here and take a look at what we have. Bill Myers, KE0OG, says, good evening, Dave, and all loggies. David, AC3HT, good evening, Dave, and all loggies. Greetings from northeastern Pennsylvania. You guys are in for some rain, I think. Current temperature is 65 degrees with 97% humidity. Ouch. Saunuke Weather says, hello, Dave, from Jeffrey N4ZHM in western North Carolina, where it's 62 degrees and raining. And Von Ziegel, who is Don N6CD, has added $10 to the chat revenue already. Thank you very much. We've got another Hamfest coming up that's specific on, and I want to bring you some kinds of reports. Next time I go to Dayton, I think instead of going out to the flea market, where I completely struck out this past year, I'm going to spend that day going to forums, see what people have to say. Angel Trujillo says, good evening for you, David, and all ham radio from Venezuela. John Brace, or maybe Brace, says, good evening, Dave, from K9BRS. Angel Trujillo, 73, from Venezuela. Yankee 5, Delta Alpha Tango. Good. Very good. Chuck Schreiber, good evening, Dave, and all loggies N5 KVO from the hill country of South Texas. Beautiful evening, 79, 31% humidity. It is 72 here outside. It's actually warmer outside than inside at the moment. 72 with 29% humidity. Glenn Martin, hello from the far west Missouri area. 67 degrees, 44% relative humidity. I suspect you're in for some rain too with this Hurricane Helene, now a Category 4. Of course, it'll start to fall apart as soon as it hits shore because it's the warm water that gets it going. It's a heat engine going in there. And once it gets ashore, it's got a lot of energy and a lot of water. And so it'll dump all the water, but the winds will gradually go down. Okay. Chip Weekly, W3BEW, greetings, Dave and fellow Augies from the Great Smoky Mountains of North Carolina, where we're just waiting for Helene to show up. I suspect she will come. Understand it's a very fast-moving storm. The eye is moving about 27 miles an hour, where some of those storms, they only move 3 or 4 miles an hour. And you can really get battered under those. Bob Kopp, good evening, Dave. He has a question. If I put a wire antenna, speaker wire, it doesn't matter what kind of wire, in my attic, do you think the roofing nails will affect the signal? The roofing nails will not. They're too small. They will affect you on like 70 centimeters if you put that up there, but for an HF antenna, no. Your big question, if you're putting in an attic antenna, what's the insulation got? The insulation has a backing to it. Now, usually that backing is against the roof itself, and you just see fiberglass here. Backings are made of 3 things. Paper, most common, plastic, not very common, and foil, aluminum foil. If those are made of aluminum foil, your attic antenna's not going to do anything for you. Otherwise, it will. It will do very well. I won't say that it's as good an antenna as having one outside, because it's not. But sometimes that's all you can do. And people have worked DXCC with attic antennas. So, yeah, go ahead. The roofing nails won't affect the signal. They're too small. They won't resonate. Larry, he says, good morning from Manila. Heard you guys got a whale of a typhoon. Little J. Wolf, wow. Larry in Manila, my dad and stepmom used to drive around in RVs during the summer months. They were into square dancing, but stopped due to the price of gas. Yeah, the RV has the RV has a 50-gallon gas tank. So that's 200 liters-ish. And I think I filled it on the trip. It was when we were in Albuquerque before we came home. And I think it was $175 to fill that tank. Now, mind you, it can make it all the way from Albuquerque to home on one tank of gas. So that's good. Now, the speaker wire, you can use any type of wire as long as it's wire, not steel or something like that. Steel is not a good conductor of electricity. You want copper. You can use copper weld. That's okay too. Copper weld is a royal pain to work with. It's steel wire coated in copper. And at RF, the current flow tends to migrate to the surface. And so it migrates right out of that steel interior and just runs down the copper. One of the advantages of copper weld is it's very strong. Second, if it's stolen, it cannot be sold. Nobody wants it because what they want is the copper. They don't want the steel, and it's mostly steel. So copper theft is a huge problem in the U.S. right now, and will get bigger. I remember over in the Philippines, there was a typhoon or something, and so the power was out, and people went and stole the copper from the high tension lines, stole the copper. And the utility said, okay, I guess you're part of the city that doesn't want electricity. And that was that. You got to take some sense of ownership for the utilities that bring us all this wonderful bounty. Yes, cell towers are ugly, but our cell phones won't work without them. So anyway, little tangent there. Okay, let's see. David AC3HT, thingamajig is an ultra simplistic word, often describing an ultra complicated device, in my humble opinion. Yes, we had, except for the Jeep, relatively few issues where we were. Loretta, rather than trying to find other things to do, in the time that I was there, Saturday, I spoke on Saturday, so she stayed there Saturday, and we stayed for the banquet, which is held up at a hotel up the street. Really tough salmon. I didn't know salmon could be so tough. Anyway, she decided to stay with me and come to my presentations. And she met a gal that she had met in Flagstaff. And the two got along like a house on fire. I mean, it was just great. The two of them just exchanging email addresses and everything like that. Both hams, my wife and this other lady. And so I think she shows interest when there are more female hams around. So let's see. Von Ziegel, I remember the Baldwin Hills disaster. Yes, you're an old man then. So am I. I was thinking about something where they talked about how they put in this something, whatever it was, 54 years ago. And that was obviously before the newscaster was born. And so it's ancient history to him. And I'm going, wait a minute. I remember that. I was 20 at the time, So, just a joy. I can remember a lot of things now, as can most of us here. I mean, we are by and large at the same age. Okay, Jeff S. Hola, Dave, from Victor Echo 3, Nancy Victor Yankee, who is from Cuba. That's a Canadian call sign. Paul C. VK4. Now that's an Australian call sign. Hi, Dave and fellow Augies. Greetings from sunny Brisbane in Queensland. Beautiful one day, perfect the next. Very nice. Larry from Manila says the local ham groups here will be doing a POTA at the Taal volcano area. And yes, it's Taal, is Taal. Now, if that were Dutch, that would mean it's an A sound, but tall instead of just tall. Okay, it means longer, but I have been to the rim of the Taal volcano. Now, what I find interesting about that, Parks on the Air, is Taal's volcano is becoming active again. And the alert levels have been raised. There are islands down in the middle of the crater lake that are inhabited, and all those people need to be gotten out of there. One of the things that can happen, and this has happened, is you get a volcanic vent of carbon dioxide, and it slowly fills up the bowl, killing all animal life below it. And then it dissipates in the wind, and people wonder what the heck just happened. And so that's another reason I wouldn't live near a volcano. Now, I've been to Mount St. Helens. I've been to Taal. I've been to Crater Lake. Been around Mount Rainier. Boy, that thing's big. And it is still an active volcano. If it blows its tops, Seattle is gone. Okay. Bob Kopf says to Glenn Martin, hello from the far eastern side of Missouri. 68 degrees, humidity 70. Leo Gustafson. Good afternoon, Dave and everyone. KK7CLY checking in from Albany, Oregon. 73 and cloudy here. Albany, Oregon. Yes. Beautiful country up there. Mark Churchill. Can I mount a vertical beam at the top of the tower, or does it have to be up on a mast above the tower? You want to disentangle the elements from the tower, because the tower's got a lot more metal to it than the mast. So I'd suggest a mast of at least a few feet to keep the bottom of those vertical elements a couple feet above the tower. Otherwise, the tower starts to become part of the radiating element. So I would recommend a 5-foot mast, something like that. There. And if it's a beam, you're going to want to rotate it anyway. So you put their rotator somewhere. Usually that's down below where the mast goes into the tower. There's a bearing around it, and then there's a flat bearing on the bottom, and then the rotator turns it from the middle. Okay. Jeff says 31 degrees from Chumbas, Cuba. Having a great holiday. No radios in Cuba. I would imagine not. Doug Dry. Hello, Doug. Good evening, Dave and all Augies from Doug, KD4NC. Dave, welcome back. It's good to be back. It's 69 degrees and raining here in Kennesaw, Georgia. Expecting 65-mile-an-hour winds here in the Atlanta area tomorrow morning. And some rain, I suspect. Around here it's very strange. By this time of year, when the leaves are turning, you expect the grass to be dry, but it's not. We've had too much rain spread out over the summer, and we still have greenish grass growing. That's one thing we saw coming back from Albuquerque. We went over Red Mountain Pass and hit the peak of the color. It peaks the last full week in September, which this is. And now next week, if it follows true to course, it'll be best for lizardhead bass and for, well, now let me see if I can remember the name of this. Haven't been there in years. There's a, it starts out at the top of the mountain. I'll think of it. But it's beautiful there. And then the week after that, you see absolutely gorgeous stuff up Owl Creek Pass. So, let's see. Ryan Sudwa. Hello, everyone. Hi, Dave. Glad to be here. Coming in from Trinidad in the Caribbean. 9 Yankee 4 Romeo Yankee. Ryan. Ryan, good to have you here. Welcome. What we usually do in this chat is I exchange any news stories I may have. We do the giveaways. I talked a little bit about the radio. And this is a chance to chat among ourselves. If you have a question, go ahead and pose it, and we'll see what we can do. So, Ryan, welcome from Trinidad. Eric Sund, N0EZX. Hello, Dave, and all Augies from Hastings, Minnesota, where it is 70 and clear. Thinking about running a long wire right near my MFJ 2012. Thoughts on length for most multi-band fun. MFJ 2012, let's look that up. MFJ, oh, that's an antenna. A multi-band antenna. Off-center fed dipole, 40, 20, 10, 6. That's the same as the MFJ 2010, which is the reference antenna, except I think this one can take more power. Okay, now, where were we here? Not running a long wire. Okay, oops. Normal view. Okay, running a long wire right near, if you put the antennas near each other, they're going to interact. They just will. Okay, if you can make it perpendicular or something like that, that's a little better. Now, getting to definitions, a long wire antenna, by definition, is 2 to 3 or more wavelengths long. So it's long. Now, the vernacular is changing, tending to mean that a long wire is a random length of wire. Now, all of the Japanese manufacturers make antenna tuners that are designed to be put at the beginning of the antenna. And they are all designed to tune long wire antennas, although the antenna can be only like 30 or 40 feet long, and it will tune it on any band. Now, the way it can do that is because there's no transmission line between the antenna and the tuner. Therefore, you don't have a piece of coax for a whole lot of energy to create heat. And then you've got a nice connection from your station out to there. It's a perfectly good way of doing things. It's not the normal American way to do things. We in America like resonant antennas. In Japan, they don't have room for resonant antennas. So they use this random piece of wire with the tuner and get out just fine. I think the Navy did a study decades ago showing that if you put the tuner right at the base of an 8-foot whip It's almost as good as a dipole or anything like that. Okay. Leo Gustafson, no surprise there. HRO up near Portland, Oregon is wanting for qualified personnel and knowledge of policies. I found, okay, we had a disconnect there, so I think I may have lost part of that from you. It is really hard to find qualified people. The ham radio population is finally doing what everybody has been warning about for about 30 years, and that is it's aging out. Another way of saying that is they're dying. We're dying. And I look at the latest issue of Electric Radio, which is absolutely my favorite magazine. I'm not a, restorer or collector of old radios per se, but it's sure fun to read the stuff. Anyway, this last issue, whoever did the paste up really royally messed it up. And there were editing errors and stuff, and I'm going, the poor guy who does this must be in his mid-90s. And he took over, it's Roy Osterwald, he took over from somebody else who aged out. Now who's going to take over for Ray? There just isn't the rising generation in ham radio. What I am afraid of is that publications like Electric Radio will disappear. And with it, all of the intellectual property associated with an entire generation's worth of radios, all the tube radios. There will no longer be people around who can do anything with a tube radio. Now you may say, well, my ICOM 7300 doesn't have any tubes in it, and it doesn't. Okay, so how relevant is that? Well, we haven't quite got to the point where transistor amplifiers are better than tube amplifiers. I'm talking about high power amplifiers. I have a 500 watt transistor, but it was designed for mobile use. To get a 600 watt with the power supply and everything, you can spend more money than that. You can spend $4,000 or $5,000 on a full legal limit transistorized amp. That's what we're moving to. But the output transistors are just not quite there yet. They're there technically, but they're not there economically. Now, I remember when I got my first HF radio. If you look up on the bookshelf up there, you'll see right next to the holocrafters. Let's see if I can get my finger up to it right there. That is an FT101B. And I picked that up at an estate sale because it's very similar to the radio I had when I got my first radio. Back then, the radio was entirely transistor, except for one tube driver and two tube finals. And they did something really smart for back then. They used really inexpensive tubes for the finals. They were the same tube used as the sweep driver in televisions. Well, tube televisions have gone the way of the dodo. And so the drivers, or the final for those things, they're really hard to replace now. There is a modification where you can convert it to a transmitting tube. But what was the name of the big company that made the great big air-cooled ceramic tubes? It's not Variac, is it? No, that's something else. They have pulled out of the amateur business. They only do military and broadcast and stuff like that now. Okay, let's see. Jero Optical Man Jeff. Hi, Dave, and all Augies from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where it is 71 degrees and clear. Whoops. We just... Larry was approached by Box Chip to sell their DMR radios. Sold about 6 of the S900 models, but too many complaints by anti-Chinese radios. Well, the Japanese radios all work other than DMR unless you get a Motorola. In fact, DMR in the U.S. was popularized by former Motorola employees because Motorola uses DMR for public service. Now, these radios aren't supposed to transmit outside the ham band, but some do. And so I've known of public service people who have a zone for their DMR frequencies for work, and also at the same time the DMR frequencies and the FM frequencies they want for ham work. So they can do just by switching zones or something. If you're that organized, I'm not organized to put things into zones, but they are there. The idea of a zone, if you travel, let's say once a month you've got to go over to Salt Lake to check on your mother. Okay, Zone 1 has all your local repeaters in it. Zone 2 will be on the way to Salt Lake. Zone 3 will be your Salt Lake repeaters. And so you go back and you don't have to paw through all these other frequencies to get to these people. Okay. Hi, Dave. Could you describe how a double balanced mixer works? The short answer to that is that it's magic. The long answer to that is going to have to be the subject of a YouTube video. And I'm getting my thing here to put in. You know, videos that I've made about, esoteric technical stuff usually don't get that many views. People really are interested in antennas, grounding, FM, stuff like that. Okay, so double balanced mixer. Okay, and this is from Nun Nun. I'll tell people Nun Nun asked this question. Fundamentally, in a double balanced mixer, you're trying to get rid of the carrier. And so you have a bridge, and it's balanced so that the carrier cannot go through. It's filtered out. But if you upset the balance with audio, meaning you're going to move the frequency a little bit or something like that, it will produce both sidebands. So you get two sidebands, no carrier. Now, the way it is usually done in most radios is you simply filter out the sideband you don't want. You're doing this at an intermediate frequency, maybe even as low as 50 kilohertz or something, so that you can get nice sharp filters and just pass the sideband that you want. And that goes on and is amplified. Now, in the modern radios built with software-defined radio type design, if you look at the QRP Labs radios, they are built as though they are software-defined radios, but they build them with analog techniques. And what they use is the so-called phasing method. If you flip a double balanced modulator the right way, it'll produce only upper sideband or only lower sideband. Okay, and then you go through playing games with, you have to do a 90-degree phase shift. The problem is, I'll tell you where the problem comes in and why this isn't done in analog radios very much. To shift every frequency in a baseband by 90 degrees, you have to remember you're not just delaying everything by a certain amount of time. Because if you have a frequency in there of 100 hertz, shifting it by 90 degrees means a big shift in time. If you're going to phase shift 1,000 hertz, you only need 1/10 of that delay. So a delay line's not going to do it. Now, another thing that can be done is if you do this at RF, and the phase difference, if you take an RF signal and delay it by several microseconds, okay, you delay all the frequencies in there about the same. So that can be done at RF, but it used to be back in the days of Central Electronics. Art Collins was trying to introduce single sideband, and he did it through the military. He was very close friends with Curtis LeMay, the general who firebombed Tokyo. But anyway, Curtis LeMay was in charge of Strategic Air Command, and they needed a way to talk to the bombers. And so Art Collins persuaded him to go with single sideband. Well, the filters for that, some of that filtering is done in audio, mechanically in audio. And if you go into the old Collins S-line and everything like that, you will find mechanical IF filters. I've got some in the 75A4. Now, in fact, I have a complete set. But Central Electronics, not Schwann, yes, Schwann, came up with the phasing method, which was, it preserved the phase relationships. And so it sounded better. And when you did a 90-degree phase shift, you did a 90-degree phase shift. You did it electronically, and it was good. And so when you put it back together with a carrier to come out of the demodulator, you've got a very good quality sounding product. Now, if you use the filter method, which Collins was using, the filter method pays basically zero attention to the phasing of the signals. And you can get several phase loops as it goes down there. You are really messing with the signal. Now, I've listened to that 75A4 on CW, and it's got the sound going through the narrowest of those mechanical filters. And it does not sound like good CW to me at all. It's raspy, it's cutting, it's just unpleasant. Whereas if I listen to a much more modern radio, it's just a beautiful sine wave. Now it's interesting, the Yaesu up there, the FT101B classic radio, is one of the first Japanese transceivers in the US. It is the radio that put Hallicrafters, Collins, National out of business because they couldn't answer it fast enough. They didn't think they had to. It was like GM when Toyota hit the shore. They thought, nobody's going to buy those crappy little Japanese rigs. Well, it turned out the Japanese rigs were anything but crappy. They were good. They were well made. The things that fell apart were the American. So there was a period of time there where it looked like Japan Incorporated was going to take over the world. And finally, Deming's work on quality, which had flourished in Japan, finally made its way back to the United States when the people at GM and Ford were willing to listen. And they brought their quality level up to match that of the Japanese. Okay, but of course, Japanese already had quite a few inroads. Let's see where we are here. So a double balanced mixer. I'll look that up and make some sort of a video for you, and we'll get that on the air. Larry, I used to, this is in Manila, I used to work on board ships for 40 years, and I recall always having to leave port due to typhoons. My last ship was an ammo ship. Oh, lovely. Yeah, nice few lightning strikes on that thing. Of course, I've got to imagine it was all extremely well grounded. Yeah, you want to get out of the port during the typhoons. And the reason it's better to do that is because the storm surge will just pick that ship up along with everything else and carry it right on shore and drop it. And ships aren't generally designed to run on sand, so it becomes a very expensive proposition to get the ship. I've seen ships down in Tampa area that were beached by these waves. They just left them to rust. I mean, it was more expensive. What you have to do is dig a moat around the ship and then dig out the sand from under it so you refloat it and get it back out into the ocean. And that costs more than the ship was worth. So anyway, ships are just big hunks of iron. So with an engine. Okay, so Chris Robinson says, evening all. Steve Brannon, if we want nice things that make life easier, then we must put up with the stuff. Yes, true. Chris Kelling, hello Dave and chat from N1WKO. Anthony H. Henderson, good evening all. Good evening, Dave. J73HA watching. Good to have you. Larry, according to my cell phone, it's 81 degrees and 40% chance of rain. Usually comes around 4 p.m. Yeah, it was always like that. What I always hated over there was rain at 11 in the morning. Because then you'd have bright sunshine at 4 in the afternoon on nice wet fields and roads, and the humidity would go through the roof. So, anyway, okay. Been viewing YouTube videos on my FT857D, and it mentioned a PLL that was installed on top. Was wondering if this might be creating why my radio is not coming on at times. I trust you solved the battery issue, right? There's a battery in there that is designed to last about 10 years, a little watch battery, and I think it's actually soldered in, so that has to be replaced. Chris Kelling says, I posed this on Reddit, which was a mistake, yeah. I'm building a fan dipole. Would it be better to use the 40-meter element for 15 or make a separate element? I will tell you my experience with that. I did a video, a supplemental video. Every month when I do Ask Dave, there's a supplemental video that expands on something that was in the column. And one of the things that I expanded on, well, the thing I expanded on, was a fan dipole. It was a fan dipole for 40, 20, and 10. Okay, and it was in an inverted V configuration. And instead of having the wires hanging down separately, I actually did what Alpha Delta does and took little plastic things, plastic pipe, punched some holes in them, and put the various fans right up there together. Okay. That antenna worked beautifully, beautifully on 40, 20, 15, and 10. So if you've got a 40 meter something up there, try it on 15 before you make your own 15 thing. Now, your radiation pattern of the 15 meter part of it's going to be weird because it's really a 3/2 dipole. It's 3 dipoles in succession. 3/2 wavelength long. So you're going to get weird patterns. But if you can put up with that, yes, fan dipole. You ought to look at that video. I think it was October of last year. And I've had a note here for ages to turn that into a regular Ask Dave video, and haven't yet. And my assistant and I were very proud of that antenna. One of the reasons we built it was to see how much insulated wire you could wrap back around an antenna for tuning. You know, would the fact that it's insulated cause issues? The answer is no, not at all. You wrap back the insulated wire just like you would wrap back bare wire. Okay? And in this case, we made the antenna of 7-strand, number 12, THHN insulation white from Home Depot. If you're going to make your own, try to find some gray wire. It tends to blend into the background a little better. White is visible from a long ways away. Okay, let's see. So I hope that answers your question. You don't need a separate element for 15 if you're building a fan dipole that's got 40 in it. Now, watch, you'll go build it and it'll be all wrong. Anyway, that was my experience, actually making one. Jackie Pennington, hey Dave, K4YUT watching from Alabama. I imagine you guys are getting plastered with some heavy rains right now. 8 Ballrick, good evening Dave and all. K9ETE here. I just wanted to mention I've used aluminum electric fence wire for antennas for a long time now. It's cheap, available at farm-type stores, and lasts forever at 17 gauge. Yes, that would work well. I forgot about aluminum. Aluminum conducts almost as well as copper. The problem with aluminum is that it can be brittle, and it will not take a lot of flexing before it breaks. This is the reason it used to be that they wired mobile homes with aluminum wiring. And then so many of them burned down that they started to look at the problem and realized where there was a crack in the wire could become a real hot spot because the resistance was higher and you could cause a fire. That copper just bends, aluminum cracks. So you got to be careful. Now, if you're using this for an antenna, by all means, use that aluminum. Make sure it's not steel. Okay, steel is not anywhere near as good a conductor on those. Okay, and I'll have to check the farm store here in town. We've got Murdoch's. To all videos been active here. This is from Larry. Along with the my own, and they post reports. One time they shut down schools in my area since it burps at times. Yes, it does. Back in my early days, I had a CB friend who installed a ground plane on top of a pine tree over 100 feet above ground. Scary thought on the height. When I first got into radio, well, let's see, I guess I did CB first. I crawled way up in our pine tree we had and put an antenna up there. You couldn't even see it outside. And it worked. Yeah, it worked. I don't mind putting antennas in trees. It doesn't take that much away. Chris Robinson, KF6NFW. Good evening from Lakeview, Oregon. Kevin Upton, hi Dave, no question. Just gratitude for you and the efforts you make to share your knowledge and curate this community of learners. Take care and God bless. Well, thank you very much. Larry said, in San Diego, I went to HRO and they had a ham who had an ATU, antenna tuning unit, attached to his antenna. On the MSC ships, many of our ships had an ATU at the base with a sign and a light to warn people. Yes, yes. Now see, this is where you can get by with a really bad antenna is if you put the tuner right at the base, and there is no transmission line, because the losses due to high SWR are due to heating in the coax cable. If there is no coax cable, the antenna tuner elements, capacitors and inductors, they are reactive. They do not dissipate energy. They reflect it in different ways. Okay, so if an antenna doesn't like what it gets and sends half of it back, it's intercepted right at the base of the antenna and sent right back out again with the next peak coming by. Okay, so you can do really well with, there's no resistor in there to make the thing hot. Okay, Kevin, thank you for your very kind words. Leo, it seemed like the ICOM PW2 is finally reaching our shores. I can't wait. Very good. Von Ziegel, IMAC, thank you. IMAC, yes. IMAC was a company, it was started by hams, and they made transmitting tubes. Extremely sturdy transmitting tubes, and are still heavily used. They've stopped building amateur radio stuff because this stuff's, quote, too small for them. But you can still get the tubes on the market, new old stock. I read in World Radio the FCC visited some big gun hams who were running power and told them to try to run their radios at lower powers. Well, I'm not surprised. I have met hams in my life who simply laugh at the 1.5 PEP kW power limit. And they'll run 2, 3, 4, 5 kilowatts. That's wrong. It's unethical. For those that you're competing against, it's just plain unethical. But people do it. People do all kinds of things. That real nice hot DXer that you know about is always helping the club out, maybe running an illegal station. And I absolutely can understand where the FCC would pivot. The people who do these are usually pretty bright people. They know what they're doing. They're also bright enough to know that if the FCC says, we're going to take you out, they mean it. Okay? We get some dumb hams who keep trying dumb stuff all over again. Eventually they're gotten off the air, but the problem is that the enforcement rules in ham radio move at the speed of government, which is extremely slow. Okay, let's see. Lynette Hallmark, Dove Deming. Oh, yeah, it works. Oh, I think she meant Dun Deming. It works. I worked with a quality analyst, black belt, that actually worked on the Toyota manufacturing line. Yeah, I got taught all this stuff when I was at, the practicalities of the stuff when I was at Lockheed. But there was a book in the 70s when American quality was just terrible. This is about the same time that Jimmy Carter gave his Malaise speech. And everybody laughed at him, told him what a jerk he was, and he lost the next election. I thought it was the best speech he'd ever given, because I thought it hit the nail on the head. But a book came out called Quality is Free. The basic thesis of this book was quality means it meets requirements. That's quality. A wheel coming off a car is not meeting requirements. Okay, a gas tank on a Pinto that bursts into flame is not meeting requirements. The other cars don't do it because they properly protect the gas tank. And on the Pintos also, if they got hit from behind, it would jam the doors. That was not meeting requirements. These were low quality products. And so what this guy who wrote the book, I may still have my copy somewhere, because I was fascinated by it. This book turned the country around. It became okay to talk about quality now that quality had a definition. This guy talks about some of the things that he tried to do was ask people what quality meant to them. And he got all kinds of different results. One was heavy. Another was expensive. Something like that. But he came by quality means meeting requirements. Now, if you're going to build a compact car, your requirement is to have a reliable car that's inexpensive. It means it's not going to have a lot of fancy features, okay? And you pick the ones that are right. But very quickly, your company builds a reputation for quality. Okay, I have a Jeep, American-made vehicle. Oddly enough, I first learned to drive in a Jeep, CJ2A, first civilian model after the war. But I've got a Jeep, and what a sweet machine. I mean, everything is where it should be. All the parts fit together. It's nice and quiet inside. And yet it can come off. You can take the top off of it. It's just a sweet vehicle. This is a quality vehicle that is the result of the movement started by that book. That book ran to the top of the bestseller lists and was mandatory reading in all the business schools. The idea being that we've missed the boat on quality because we couldn't define it. We didn't even know what it was. Low cost doesn't mean low quality. It means it meets the requirements for a low-cost application. Okay, so think of it the same way, why we've got such great radios today. These meet requirements. There's noise blankers in them. All the radios have noise blankers. All of them. That was a fancy new gadget way back in the 50s. So, I mean, this is what happened to this country that got us out of that trough and back up on top. Deming suddenly was popular again. The Toyota method, which is the Deming method, by the way. The Toyota method was, the Toyota became the teachers of that method. Just-in-time engineering, all of this kind of stuff like that. Why have a warehouse full of parts? Oh, I got a discount on them. Well, you're paying to warehouse them. So they're not cheap anymore because you had to buy a building to put them in. Now, there is some pushback on some of these things like just-in-time engineering. I talked to the guy who's the head of DX Engineering. I had a cool conversation with him at Dayton. Not this last Dayton, but the last one I had attended before. Unfortunately, I hit the wrong button on the camera. I don't have this recorded, but I asked him, I says, you run this huge operation out of 2 warehouse locations, one in Reno, one in Talmadge, Ohio. And I says, do you believe in just-in-time? Getting just enough antennas and just enough radios? He says, no way. He says, I can't give quality service to my customers because what they want is too varied. And if I don't have it in stock, I lose a customer. So he's kind of figured out an intermediate way. But if you're making millions of Jeeps, you don't want 1 million tires to show up outside one day. You want enough for the day. And then by morning, you want enough for the next day. Now, that's the ideal. Obviously, There has to be some slack in the system, because this can back up badly. If you have to shut your plant down, that means people who make tires need to stop making tires, or else they end up stockpiling them. This is interesting. What IBM did during World War II when they weren't selling much, I mean, they sold some stuff to the government, but not much, is Tom Watson decided to keep everybody employed making spare parts. And it was not so much to preserve spare parts, because models would change. It was because he was going to preserve his team. And he did so fantastically. Okay, let's see if we can't get all the way down here. Lynette Hallmark, love, laughing out loud. Okay, Danielle Kelly. There were many other quality control experts besides Deming. I suspect they all knew each other. Okay, there was Joseph Duran and the others who the Japanese learned from, and they did learn from Deming. Also, many American companies were run by accountants, and that is a problem. KE0OG. Look at Boeing. When Boeing moved its headquarters to Chicago, I knew right then they were on the downhill slide. Because you move your management away from what's actually being done, what you're actually building, you're going to lose communication. You're going to lose control of the configuration. And that's what happened. That's what happened. So now they're, I believe, going to move management back to Renton, Washington, where the plants are. And the new chief of Boeing is an engineer. A stupid accountant cannot run an engineering organization, and shouldn't. When I went to work for Northrop right after I left the Air Force, it was led by an engineer. Jack Northrop was retired by then, but he left engineers in his place. And so you got decent decisions out of management because they were engineers too. Now when I got to IBM, I discovered that IBM is run by the marketers. It's all about marketing. And so the technical sometimes took a backseat, sometimes. Okay, let's see. Deming works. It works very well. Yes, it does. Then there's this whole ISO 9000 thing. The thing about ISO 9000 versus Six Sigma is interesting. ISO 9000 means that you have documented your processes and you actually follow them. Wow, what an idea. You actually follow them. And if you need to change your process, you cause the documentation to be officially changed. That way you know what you're doing. You can properly budget, because what you're budgeting on is what you're actually doing. Now, the Six Sigma gets into the feedback loop back into the engineering. In Korea, if a ship goes into dry dock, they put up big tents on the dock, and they move all the engineers that are working on that refit into that tent. And they expect every engineer to have gone on that ship at least once during the day. And they rarely have problems with refitting because the people are right there. Okay. Let's see. Rhodium 2 and Goldblatt. Great stuff. Yeah, not my issue anymore. What I need is some one-on-one guidance on running a YouTube channel. I recall one ship, this is Larry, anchored at Sasebo Harbor due to our cargo. When the waves are too high, we were dragging anchor and nearly landed in their homes. Our bombs were safe, but yeah, I know it's an issue. Larry, been checking on the batteries, but still working with it. Larry, may sound funny, but some mariners loved the ammo ships as we got 10% more pay. We were always anchored at the entrance to the harbor. Yes, I guess. Because if you blow that ship up, it's not going to block the entrance to the harbor. Optical man Jeff, Dave Wire, helical antennas, not popular any longer. Are you talking about the helical, circularly polarized antennas for like 900 megahertz to talk to satellites? They're out there. I don't know that they've ever been terribly popular. By the way, it's possible to build two cross dipoles like this, put a 90-degree phasing loop in it, and receive and transmit circular polarization. Okay. KO4 VNX Dwayne, reading you 5'9" plus 20 deep in the woods of Virginia. Larry, still recall when I was on board the ship that Chang was a ham and asked if I ran power on my station. I says, no, too many of my neighbors still run analog TV. And homemade antennas, 100 watts, okay. Darren McLaren says hi from VE9AE. Javier Armendariz. Dave, can anything useful be done with cable TV coax? Yes. And I keep saying I'm going to try that once. It's 75 ohm cable. If you get a dipole up to its proper height, which is half wave, the feed point impedance is about 75 ohms. So that's a good cable for that. Now I haven't run any tests. I need to do that. I'm going to put that down here on this little note. And that is a 75 ohm cable. The nice thing about 75 ohm cable is it's dirt cheap. Because everybody uses it. If you try to go to Home Depot, probably the only connectors you'll find for it are F connectors. And so you have to have some way of getting the right connection for your radio. Okay, Leo Gustafson, that's just what's happened to Greyhound when it was run by First Group in Scotland. Oh, yeah, my neighbor has a... Okay, we're going to do the drawing. I'm going to take two of these out. I showed earlier there is a little digital microscope. These were actually sent to me by the company to give away. And this multifunctional microscope. And so I have 4 entries. So I'm going to turn them all so that none are facing me. It doesn't take a lot of shuffling to do this. Okay, let's take one from the middle. And this is from David Samsel in Moscow, Pennsylvania, AC3HT. Okay. Well, Dave, you've got a microscope on the way. Okay. Now the other one, we've now got 3 to pick from. So I'll shuffle the letters around. Turn them around so I can't see them. I don't remember who's done what to them. But we'll take this one from the middle. This is from Tullis. Okay. And this is from Marvin Tullis, KO4ZWD in Hahira, Georgia. I may wait a day or two so that it can be delivered to something on land, because it's going to be a really rainy day. But these will go out very soon, okay? Now, the next month's, we'll put that with that, right there. Okay, next month's drawing, the remaining 2 will be shredded, so the privacy will be kept intact. Okay, David Brennan, I picked up, David says, thank you, I'm very grateful. I picked up an ACOM 1000 amp wire antenna, would you recommend? I have a 1500 watt Versatuner and 3 manual tuner, or Versatuner 3. I would recommend you use 14 gauge or heavier wire. You can get some really high voltages on there and some very high currents. So 14 gauge wire or 12 or 10 or 8 or whatever. 8 gets a little ridiculous. But you can string up an antenna and they work identically to any other antenna. Antennas are, except for the possibility of burning out a thin wire, antennas are power agnostic. They don't care what's being put through them. Okay? So, yeah, let's see. Would love to talk with Yaesu software engineers and ask why I can just have one program for all radios for programming. Ha! Good luck. Okay. Thank you. We're out of time. I love you guys. Thanks so much. Guys and gals, thank you so much for being here with me on this Thursday evening where it is now 66 outside and 35% humidity. And I think we're looking at a few glorious days. It's supposed to hit 90 in Denver tomorrow, which will set records. They set a record today. It was 90. It was 3 degrees hotter than the last record for that day. And we'll try and keep those YouTube videos coming. We are going to start sending videos first to those who are helping support the channel, and then, just a few days later, general release. And so also we're going to start something new where when people do a super comment of some kind, you can do a comment and throw in a book or two with it. Okay, we're going to try and gather those questions and answer them. Okay. Now, I want to point out I did get, I haven't acknowledged, we've got Von Ziegel's $10 to chat revenue. Optical Man Jeff's $15 says, thanks, Dave, for all the answers for all of us hams. And David AC3HT says, you are amazing, and has put $20 in. Well, thank you all very much, and until we next meet, 73.